Welcome to episode 57 of Shane Talks 99. Today is December 22nd, 1999. We got through that weird Tuesday release yesterday and all that shit that went along with my rewatch of that. So thank you for bearing with me through that, cathartic experience. So let's get to the Wednesday releases before Christmas Day of 1999. And we got two films to talk about. One of them I get chastised by basically all of my friends for hating this movie because apparently I'm like the only person on the planet that hates this movie, but like I legit hate this movie. So let's start off talking about how I used to consider myself an Oliver Stone fan. Like for a long time, I thought that Oliver Stone made movies that I really liked. There's Wall Street, Born on the Fourth of July, The Doors, I love. Natural Born Killers is a great movie. U-Turn is really good. And then 1999 happened, and 1999 changed my entire opinion on Oliver Stone. I literally have not really cared about anything he's done since then. I haven't really liked anything that he's done since then. And in 1999, Oliver Stone directed an American football film called Any Given Sunday. And so many of my friends love this movie. So many of my closest friends love this movie, and they do not let me live down the fact that I am just not a fan of it. I just maybe it's real. Maybe this movie is like what it's really like in a football locker room as somebody who didn't play football. I played other sports, but like maybe on an NFL level, this movie does show what it's like to be, in an NFL locker room and on a team and dealing with the politics of like the owner and the manager and the I don't know. And like I could not bring myself to rewatch this film this week because of the fact that like back in 2020, I rewatched a lot of 1999 films. It was just kind of something that I did during the pandemic. I've always had this love of 99. Kind of this podcast, came from the fact that I was revisiting all these 99 movies back then. So I know I watched it then because I was like, maybe I need to give it a chance. As I've talked about on the podcast before, there's a lot of movies that I used to hate, namely Groundhog Day, that upon rewatching it years later, I've changed my opinion of it. My opinion did not change about Any Given Sunday in 2020 when I watched it, so I felt like there was absolutely no reason for me to revisit it, especially for the fact that 1999 already gave us one of the best American football films ever back in January when we got Varsity Blues. There was no reason to release another American football film this year. Like, it doesn't even belong in 1999, in my opinion. Like, I really, really wish that like Any Given Sunday could have had some like production mishaps and it would have just been pushed back over into 2000. Couldn't have even been considered a 99 movie at that point, but that is not what happened. But like when it comes to football movies, there are just so many other like hundreds before this one that I would rather watch, but things like The Program or Remember the Titans, or I mean, The Replacements. Friday Night Lights is great. I mean, even I love Little Giants as being a kids movie. I would watch Little Giants, the kids football movie, 1,000 times before I would ever consider going back and watching Any Given Sunday again. So like Al Pacino is fine in this movie. Like Al Pacino plays Al Pacino. Al Pacino plays a character I'm exactly used to Al Pacino playing. He's over the top. He yells a lot. He does Al Pacino things. Like Al Pacino's not what hurts this movie. Al Pacino's coaching a football team that after the first two quarterbacks get injured in the same game, he has to call up his third stringer quarterback named Willie Beamen. Willie Beamen is played by Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx also isn't the problem with this movie. Like Jamie Foxx does a good job in the character, and like full disclosure, 100% truth. And this is kind of maybe where I dislike this film so much. I have to kind of go and analyze the Willie Beamen character because I think because like I said, Jamie Foxx does a good job as Willie Beamen, but I think it's the character of Willie Beamen himself that makes me have issues with this film, and it's because Willie Beeman is a super narcissist in this film. The way he treats people, his attitude, thinking he's the best at everything. I think not, the way he pushes away people that are trying to help him, the way that he doesn't let good things come to him, and he kind of just always takes it too far. Um, that attitude, like I think the Willie Beeman attitude when 19-year-old Shane watched this film think there was like a mirror being put up to 19-year-old Shane because I can see a lot of myself in that character. And I think I didn't like it. I mean, 100% honest. Like, I think that seeing what Willie Beeman was in this movie just kind of made me, I mean, it just hit too close to home for me where I was like, don't like that guy. That guy's too much like me, and I see how negative it's affecting the story in the movie, and he's supposed to be the bad guy, and I don't like the fact that they're making him. I mean, not even that he's like the bad guy, like he's not the bad guy, but like he is negatively viewed by his teammates and things like that. So like I feel looking back on it that at that point in my life I didn't need or want to see something like that on screen because of how close it hit me. And so I think that's kind of one of the main things about this movie that I don't like. So like I said, I watched this movie again in 2020 and I think my rewatch of it at that point I didn't get the same feelings and emotions from it. I think more so I remembered being that guy and I was ashamed of who that was and being like that. So I think that in my 2020 rewatch, that is kind of what I mean. I had the negative connotations in my head about the movie and about not liking it, and I think that's kind of what fueled my dislike during the rewatch. Was going, I remember being like that, and I remember not liking myself when I was like that. So like, I guess like the embarrassment of that character is what then and now kind of just makes me not enjoy the movie. That's like it's probably the biggest thing, but there's so many other things in this movie that I don't like. I'm not a fan of Cameron Diaz's character in this movie. I think as the owner of the franchise and the way she acts and the way she behaves, like I understand she was probably trying to get away from like her good girl persona from some of like the rom-coms she had done before this and was trying to play this like edgy, gritty, F-bomb dropping character that was like a complete psychopathic bitch. Like I get it, like, but I just didn't like the character. I don't even necessarily think that it was Cameron Diaz's fault. Again, I just don't care for the script for this movie. I just don't think it does a lot that is enjoyable to me to watch. Like when I go and watch a sports movie, this isn't the story that I want to get from a sports movie about all this fighting and bickering and politics and in like the dynamic of the coach and the owner and like I just don't find that enjoyable as a sports film. And I think that should have changed. Like, if I was expecting a very sports heavy movie the first time going in 1999, I should have had a different reaction in 2020 when I watched it, knowing what I was getting involved with. And again, it still just didn't change my experience watching the movie. And again, like the cast is not what's wrong with this movie. Dennis Quaid's in the movie. He's fine. He's regular Dennis Quaid. He does some good Dennis Quaid stuff in this movie. Aaron Eckhart, one of my favorite actors, is in this movie. And again, he's just fine. He's there. One of the assistant coaches, like he's okay in this movie. He doesn't do anything wrong. We got a couple of professional football players in the film. Jim Brown and Lawrence Taylor both make appearances in this movie. Musicians, LL Cool J and Bill Bellamy are both in this movie. Like both people I liked in the 90s. Both people, I mean, I don't have anything against them now, but like I was a fan of both of these guys in the 90s. Matthew Modine and John C. McGinley are both in this movie. Like, there's a lot of people in this movie that I like. And again, it's not the actors that are the problem. It's the story, it's the script, it's what it's trying to tell me. It's like, whatever message they're trying to get to me does not hit with me. And I don't care about the plot or the characters or anything that goes on in this movie. Like, at one point in the movie, like Willie Beamen tries to give up and give like this inspirational speech to his teammates about how like, oh, I've let you guys all down. Like I should be like the guy. I'm gonna be the guy in the second half. And bro, like that speech was like 10% as good as James Vanderbeek's speech in Varsity Blues. Like it doesn't even hold a candle to what James Vanderbeek delivered to us in Varsity Blues. So like they need that. It was so subpar and just not even close. And then like end of the movie, you've got Al Pacino up there giving like his final press conference before he retires. And like the only thing I remember thinking through that scene was this is nowhere near as good as Nick Nolte quitting in Blue Chips. Like the final scene of Blue Chips is Nick Nolte quitting. And like Al Pacino's speech is nowhere near as good as that. So it's just like the film just doesn't do it for me. There are so many better sports films. There's so many better like American football films out there that you should go out and watch instead of this. Like I said a few minutes ago, if this movie had fallen into 2000, I wouldn't have been sad about it at all. I think this is kind of a crap ending to 1999 to throw this movie in here. And like, what, like, I don't know. I guess football is associated with Christmas Day, I guess, maybe. I think in 96, like Jerry Maguire was a Christmas release. So, I mean, I guess, I don't know. It is what it is. moving on to the next movie, if you've ever listened to any of my podcasts or anything where I've ever talked about biopics, you know that I'm not a fan of biopics. I absolutely hate and despise fictionalized versions of true stories, um, for the most part. What we're about to talk about is one of those exceptions. And one of those exceptions is the 1999 film directed by Milos Forman. It is called Man on the Moon. And it is literally one of the, it's a movie that hits me in so many personal and emotional ways that I've actually like I've never sat down and actually tried to see how much of it is fictionalized because from what I do know from documentaries on Andy Kaufman, a lot of what is in the movie is right. And I've just never gone and fact checked a lot of it because I do really enjoy and love the experience of Man on the Moon, especially Jim Carrey's performance. Like Jim Carrey in this film is playing Andy Kaufman, and the thing that I get the most from this movie that makes me absolutely love it is the concept of Andy Kaufman hiding himself behind the characters that he plays and taking those characters like into real life, like Tony Montana, like the lounge singer character that he portrays, and like taking him out into the real world and making him a real character, and then having his manager play Tony Montana at times so that him and Andy can be seen in the same room as not the same person, even though at other times it was Andy playing Tony. Like that concept of taking his act into the real world and just it's a concept that this creating a persona version of yourself, this like fictional version of yourself, is something that I think I really learned from Andy Kaufman. Like it's the concept of if you create a character version of yourself and put that out there for the world to see, if people don't like it, like it's not that they don't like you, they just don't like that version of you. They don't like that fictional character version that you are portraying out there to the world. And it's a way for people like me, people like Andy Kaufman, who do care and value how people see them. Like it gives us the ability to, well, if that person doesn't like me, they don't like drunk Shane. Drunk Shane's out there and drunk Shane's acting like an idiot and people don't like him, but that's okay. They don't have to like drunk Shane because they don't know real Shane. They don't know who Shane really is. Andy Kaufman did a lot of the very similar things like this. And for me, being the military brat that I was, like, I mean, in 8 years, I went to 10 different schools. Like we moved around a lot as a kid, and like I never had trouble making friends. I consider myself a very personable person, but I put out that persona of being a very personable person. And part of that personality was making people laugh at me, or I'm sorry, making people laugh with me before they were laughing at me. So, the physical comedy or physical comedy was stuff that I learned from people like Andy Kaufman or Jim Carrey, or a lot of the SNL stuff that I grew up watching, like physical over the top comedy was the way that I would get people to just like laugh and make them laugh, and like I didn't care if I had to put my body at risk by jumping and falling onto the ground and messing my back up, or busting my knees on something or tripping over something, like whatever I could do to make people laugh with me instead of laughing at me. Like that is something that when I saw this movie, and like I mean obviously I had seen the public Andy Kaufman. I grew up watching SNL, so I knew of Andy Kaufman on SNL. I'd seen video clips of it in clip shows and stuff like that. I'm a big Christopher Lloyd fan, so I grew up watching Taxi as well as a child. So I saw Andy Kaufman on Taxi. So like just watching the physical comedy that he was able to do, like it's it's the stupid antics and things that, like, how can I make somebody else laugh to try to get validation and make them like me? Seeing that, and then with Man on the Moon, seeing more of what again fictionally was told about his life behind the scenes and the struggles that he went through and the things that were going on with him, like it really connected me to this movie. And again, like I was a huge Jim Carrey fan. Like obviously Jim Carrey in the '90s was huge. I was a big fan of him on In Living Color. I was a big fan of Ace Ventura, The Mask, all those '90s movies that he was doing. Again, more physical comedy. Is just those are the type of comedians that I really associate with. So Jim Carrey portraying a comedian who I already had a liking for really just it it kind of set this movie up. There was no way that I wasn't going to love it, and I ended up really, really enjoying this biopic. And again, I don't know the percentage of how much of it is real. I try not to ever think about that. Um, but moving past Andy Kaufman, like I can be honest, like I'm not a huge Courtney Love fan. Like I enjoy Garbage, like their music is fine, but Courtney Love as a person, I never really found myself like finding her interesting or wanting to know or have anything about her. But recently, sometime last year, I think it was, one of the podcasts I listened to called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s, which ended up doing 120 plus episodes now. They did an episode on Smells Like Teen Spirit. For that episode, Rob Harvilla had Courtney Love come on, and it's like a 3 hour episode because he talks to her for 2 hours, not only just about Smells Like Teen Spirit, but just about the whole life and experience and how she got involved with Kurt Cobain and Nirvana and all that kind of stuff. And like listening to her talk for 2 hours, again, she's kind of pretentious and annoying to be honest, but like hearing her stories kind of gave me a bigger respect for her. Um, didn't really affect the performance in this movie, but like I have recently changed my Courtney Love view of life, like of how I look at Courtney Love. I don't dislike her as much as I used to, but like truth be told, there's a lot of people in the '90s that could have played this role, and I would have been just fine with it. So like I don't feel like Courtney Love stood out in this movie at all. Danny DeVito and Paul Giamatti are also in this movie. They both do an absolutely amazing job. They're very supportive and very, some of the conversations they have with Jim Carrey's character in this movie are both absolutely amazing and just, very inspirational and helpful to his character. Um, so yeah, despite this film being a biopic, like I think I've tried to explain why it resonates with me so much and the things that like make me love Man on the Moon. And then there was like a little bit of icing on the cake years later. In 2017, Netflix released a documentary called Jim and Andy, and it literally has behind the scenes footage of Jim Carrey and how, I mean, he was very method with this role. He literally took on the persona of Andy Kaufman both on and off camera. And there is just a bunch of behind the scenes footage. I mean, like I own this movie on DVD, and I'm pretty sure there's some behind the scenes making of like featurettes on the DVD. It is nothing compared to this documentary. Like this documentary just goes into so much detail about what Jim Carrey did and how into the character he got. It's got interviews with him now where he talks about what he put himself through for this role, and it's just absolutely amazing. So if you like Man on the Moon at all, even just the slightest bit, or you're a Jim Carrey fan, like I highly recommend Jim and Andy. Like it's just as far as what an actor does to create a role, especially a role that's a real person, and like what he did and how he acted was just it's so absolutely amazing to watch. And I really need to give it a rewatch. Like it's been years since I saw it, so I just remember how much it stood out with me. Like seeing all this behind the scenes stuff. There was just like home videos that somebody was shooting there. Like I don't even know who owns the rights to. Like I don't think it was like a production behind the scenes thing. I think somebody was just around shooting behind the scenes footage that they ended up, putting together for this documentary. So yeah. Uh any given Sunday, garbage. Don't watch it. Man on the Moon, absolutely amazing. I highly recommend it, especially if you have any interest in like theater, performing arts, creating characters, that kind of stuff. So we are now 3 days away from Christmas. Christmas of 1999 had three really good movies that all came out on the same day. Three very vastly different movies, but that are all really good. So Christmas might be kind of a longer episode because I'm going to have a lot to say about all three of them. So we will be back on Christmas morning.